Cheers and cries of joy boomed from the speakers as the video clip replayed itself, the screen showing dozens of people gathered around the ruined remains of what used to be a highway. Amidst the rubble, a figure emerged from the destruction, carrying injured and unconscious civilians to safety. Battered and bloody they appeared, but they were alive, saved from the jaws of death by the timely intervention of the man. No, the hero. Again, the woman smiled down at her child, rubbing his head affectionately. Izuku, I think you're responsible for tens of thousands of this video's views. It's a little too scary for mommy to watch. 4-year-old Midoriya Izuku watched the screen with wide eyes filled with admiration, clutching the All Might action figure he treasured tightly to his small chest. The respect he felt for the hero was almost on the level of worship, his room decorated with countless pieces of All Might memorabilia. Are you seeing this? A bystander in the video yelled in the foreground, tears of joy running down his face. He's already saved 100 people, and it's only been 10 minutes so far. And he's laughing. True enough, the hero's mighty laugh echoed proudly, a victorious sound that rang through the air like a bell, announcing that everything was going to be all right. Fear not. Why, you ask? Because I am here, All Might declared, standing tall and confident. A symbol of modern heroism, a symbol of peace. He's so cool, Izuku exclaimed, his voice full of wonder. When I get my quirk, I wanna be just like him. I'm afraid there's no hope for him, the medical professional replied in a curt but calm voice, the finality of his statement seeming to hammer that fact deeper into everyone in the room. The action figure of the #1 hero All Might clattered to the ground as the boy's fingers loosened in shock. The doctor's office in the hospital was cold and lifeless like the poor boy's eyes as the bespectacled man reported his findings. It felt as though all life had drained out of Midoriya Izuku as he sat frozen, unable to believe his ears even as his brain started to process the words. They had run tests, dozens of them, with strange devices he'd never even seen or heard of before. The nurses probed and prodded at him, took blood samples, x-rays, even put him in a weird worrying machine that sent shivers down his spine. Yet, they had found nothing. Absolutely nothing. No, there must be some mistake. Izuku's mother cried out from beside him, her tone desperate. Most of the other kindergartners' quirks have already manifested, but he's the only one. Pardon my asking, ma'am, but you're 4th generation, yes. May I ask about your quirk? Yes, of course, she replied hesitantly, a wave of her hand showcasing her telekinesis as the action figure floated off the floor and into her lap. I pull small objects towards me, and my husband can breathe fire. She glanced worriedly at her son, only to find him still stunned in silence, his eyes staring forward at empty air. A wave of mounting dread hit her as she feared for her son's happiness. The boy always dreamed of becoming a hero when he was older, but now. The doctor cleared his throat, catching her attention as he produced a pointer from his pocket. With it he gestured to the X-ray mounted on the awl, tapping on the diagram. By the age of 4, a child should manifest either one of his parents' quirks or a composite of the two. It is also possible for quirks from a previous generation to show up or even mix with the ones from a different generation, he explained, nodding his head. However, early quirk research discovered one important finding. The doctor pocketed his pointer, now using his finger to tap on a specific part of the X-ray diagram. It has to do with the presence or absence of the extra joint in the pinky toe. Humans have no need for this, you see. Those without this joint represent the next stage of evolution. Midoriya and Co squinted at the image and looked over it carefully, before turning back to the doctor in confusion. But that's Izuku's X-ray, isn't it? I don't see any extra joint. Well, after running some tests we have come to a conclusion about your son's condition. The doctor looked pensive as he considered his next words. Your son is what we in the medical field would call an abnormality. What? The woman cried out, looking horrified. My mistake, I meant no offense. He coughed and backpedaled slightly, raising his hands in a placating manner. It is simply a term we use to classify a certain type of individual who is unable to use their quirk for one reason or another. I don't understand, she whispered, the urge to hug her boy rising with each passing minute. Her poor Izuku still sat there unmoving, his mouth ajar. Is there something wrong with my boy? No, nothing that would endanger his life, the doctor answered. It's becoming quite rare nowadays, but cases like these happen once in a while. What do you mean? You see, ma'am, what young Izuku here has is what we would call an abnormal quirk, he theorized, holding up a palm to stop her from interrupting. It's not that he doesn't have a quirk, it's just that he probably has one that is too hard to even detect or understand. I still don't. There are two possibilities, the man continued, showing 2 fingers for emphasis. The first is that his quirk is so insignificant that one could hardly notice it in everyday life. Take for example a person who quirk emits tiny amounts of heat, or a quirk that causes nearby metals to vibrate imperceptibly. Nobody would even know unless they ran extensive tests. They would still have to understand what the quirk was even doing in the first place. The most well-known of these cases is the Akihabara incident 6 years ago. A man previously thought to be quirkless was discovered to have a quirk that produces an uncontrollable, minuscule electromagnetic pulse every 15 minutes that interfered slightly with any electronics in a 1-meter radius. He didn't even know what he was doing until he noticed all the television screens he walked past produced a tiny bit of static. Now, we've tested young Izuku here with every instrument we could have thought of: Geiger counters, EMP sensors, cyclotrons, you name it, we've done it. Nothing. Izuku's mother nodded slowly, listening intently while the words seemed to flow right past her son's ears. The second possibility is that the boy has a quirk that can only activate under very specific conditions. This is most likely what is happening here. Some notable real-life examples include the quirk to create water only when there are exactly 20 people are in physical contact with you, or quirk to control air only when everyone around you is feeling the same emotion. That last one happened at an 80-year-old's birthday party. An old lady had inadvertently used it to blow out her candles. It was likely nobody would have ever found out if she and her family hadn't been so happy that day. I have never heard of quirks like these. ᴘᴘ stammered, still in shock at the revelation. Of course you haven't, that's why they're extremely rare. The doctor shook his head sadly upon glancing at the boy, who hadn't said a word throughout his whole explanation. The latest case was 3 years ago. An elderly man in Korea who thought he was quirkless all his life discovered he could control a hurricane's path, but only when he was in the eye of the storm. He promptly got onto a boat he'd found and sailed out to sea, dragging the hurricane along with him and saving hundreds of lives. So, my boy can still be a hero, she breathed, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. The man hummed, thinking of what to say before shaking his head slowly. There's no real way to say this. Even after 4 generations of research into quirks, there are still so many things we don't know about superhumans. It's perplexing, really. He took a moment to catch his breath. Unfortunately, it's highly unlikely that your son will ever be able to use his quirk, let alone become a hero. ᴘᴘ gasped, a hand over her mouth. She took a quick glance at her son, only to find him still frozen with the same empty expression. Her heart sank as the doctor began to explain further. It takes a long time for abnormal quirks like these to be understood, even by their own user. Abnormals have lived and died without even knowing what their quirks do or if they even have any at all. The doctor sighed, clasping his hands together. By the time he discovers the specific factors needed to activate his quirk, he could be older than you are now. Said quirk might not even have very noticeable effects. The mustached man paused, taking off his thick-rimmed glasses as he glanced between the two of them, a hint of pity in his eyes. "I'm sorry." The pair finally arrived home after a long walk home in the pouring rain, having not exchanged even a single sentence on the way back. Izuku shuffled lifelessly towards his room, looking like the most miserable 4-year-old in the world. His mother reached out gently with a hand but stopped, unable to come up with anything to console him with as she followed him into the dark little room that housed the computer. Posters of All Might plastered the walls with his trademark grin, heavily contrasting the mood of everyone in the room. Without a word, the boy trudged towards the computer and turned it back on from its sleep mode. Empty eyes focused on the video. He unpaused with a soft click of the mouse. The screen lit up with color as the magnificent visage of All Might appeared once again. 6 people on his massive back as he carried them off to safety. "Fear not." "Why, you ask?" "Because I am here." All Might grinned triumphantly at the camera, the sounds of people cheering in the background blasting out the speakers. "Once again, the day is saved thanks to the symbol of peace." "Mom," Izuku began, mouth still ajar with shock. His mother sniffled, worry for her child almost overwhelming her there and then. "No matter what kind of trouble you're in, he'll save you," with a smile. He turned around to face her, fat tears rolling down his cheeks as he began to cry. "A super cool hero like that." A trembling hand pointed at the screen as his voice began to shake. "Can I be a hero too?" The dam broke as she rushed forward, crashing into him with a tight hug. She too began to cry as she wrapped her arms around his tiny body, embracing him while tears flowed freely from her eyes. "I'm sorry, Izuku," she wailed, feeling her child tremble with sadness. She felt her heart shatter into pieces, holding him close to her bosom as they both cried into each other. "I'm so sorry. Mommy's so sorry." Unbeknownst to the two of them, that very moment was exactly when Izuku's abnormal quirk began to activate. The criteria needed for its use demanded the user feel exceptionally powerful emotions in a short span of time, emotions that encompass the user entirely. At that moment, all poor Izuku could feel was a mix of despair and desire. Despair that he'd possibly never be able to achieve his dream of becoming a hero, and despair that he'd made his dear mother cry. At the same time, the desire to be a hero filled his mind. A bottomless hunger that seemed to consume his entire being filled his heart. The child knew it was selfish, but couldn't stop. He wanted to be a hero. With the criteria fulfilled, the Quirk began to create. Glowing motes of light manifested, starting to gather as they formed a sphere on the roof of the apartment building, shrouded by the heavy rain. The egg slowly but surely got larger as it fed off Izuku's despair to grow, unknowingly comforting its master. As it grew, the light it emitted grew dimmer and dimmer until a long, writhing tentacle emerged, the tip splitting off into 5 points to form fingers, then a hand. The arm reached out towards the horizon as a bolt of lightning speared through the sky, illuminating the growing being. The limb seemed to recoil in fear, fingers brushing against the concrete roof. Wherever the digits touched, they left deep gouges, almost like the solid concrete had been made of soft butter. It reached out slowly, testing the environment and inching forward hesitantly. The sphere began to change as it elongated, more tentacles sprouting from its torso, and eventually forming into human-like limbs. The being now had the rough shape of human adult, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Glowing fingers flexed experimentally, forming a fist and then opening it to feel the raindrops slide off its smooth palm. It looked skywards, establishing a mental link between itself and its master. The entity jolted as the link connected, a rush of emotions flooding its mind. Desire and despair twisted and flowed like oil and water through the connection. Slowly it began to consume the despair for fuel, while examining the desire with a childish curiosity. The desire to be a hero, it realized. A desire so strong that it overwhelmed the newborn being, bringing it to its knees. A super cool hero like that. Can I be a hero too? The words echoed in its mind as it stood, trembling slightly. A hero. But what was a hero? It probed through the master's mind for more knowledge, only to be blasted with a literal torrent of information as colors and shapes began to appear, memories being copied and transferred like data in a computer. Men and women in magnificent costumes saving innocents, rescuing them from danger, fighting against the forces of evil. Icons of hope and justice in times of darkness. It strengthened the link, trawling through the master's mind for memories associated with the word. There, it found a single, resounding memory, stronger than all the others it had previously come across. Because I am here. The victorious image of All Might appeared, and along with it came a rush of emotions from the master's mind. Hope, admiration, respect, all might, hero. The simulacrum mouthed the words, finding itself unable to speak. A minor setback. Looking down at itself and finding its current form unsatisfactory, the being began to shift, slimming down as the outline of its body started to curve. A female form, it decided. The master's memories showed that other humans were more receptive to a female hero. They certainly cheered much louder. Nodding to itself, it began to think of a more specific look, ultimately deciding to base itself off its master's, no, her brother's DNA. Hero. Waist-length snow-white hair blossomed from her head as a beautiful face formed on what used to be a featureless canvas. A modest chest and womanly hips rounded out the body as she flexed and stretched, experimenting with interest. The end result was nothing more than stunning as the being stood upright, looking more like a supermodel than a superhero. Then again, from her brother's memories, most superheroines tended to look that way. Looking down, she found her entire body naked but featureless like a mannequin except for her navel, an absence of genitalia. Where a woman's sacred parts were supposed to be, there was only smooth, milky white skin. There weren't even any nubs on her chest, unlike the memories that brother remembered. Strangely, he associated a woman's parts with a strong sense of embarrassment, prompting her to leave the body featureless from the neck down. If Oniai-chan could see her now, she thought. Yes, that was what the memories told her, that all little sisters should address their big brothers with that specific term. Oniai-chan. She took the form of a girl in her late teens or early 20s, her features strikingly similar to himself and his mother. She could probably even pass for an older sister if not for her pale alabaster skin. Turning to face the city, the being once again reviewed her memories. Hero. If that was what Oniai-chan wanted, then it was her life's purpose to fulfill it. A pair of cold, staring eyes opened, a soft green glow emanating from them as she scanned the horizon. She bent her knees and leaped, soaring through the air effortlessly like a bird of prey. On that very night, 4-year-old Midoriya Izuku had just unknowingly created the #1 vigilante. It had been 9 months since the doctor's visit. The Midoriya family decided it would be better for their son to be called quirkless instead of an abnormality after researching into past cases of abnormals, finding stories of people shunned by society and feared for their unknown power thanks to an infamous group of villainous abnormals 5 years ago. Though it broke her heart, Izuku's mother decided to go along with the plan, listing her son as quirkless instead of branding him with such a horrible title. That's mean, Kakan. See, can't you see he's crying? The tiny boy shielded the other child with his own body, arms outstretched. Before him the 3 bullies advanced, their faces curling with cruel grins. Aye, if you keep going, I'll never forgive you, Izuku yelled, still shaking with fear. Bakugo Katsuki and his 2 lackeys stood stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter, pointing and mocking. That bully had once been his friend, his best friend, even. How did things go so wrong? Even though you're quirkless. Bakugo slammed a fist into his palm, a tiny explosion bursting from the impact. You're pretending to be a hero, Deku. Izuku felt his knees wobble like jelly until the fear he was feeling simply melted away, replaced by a sudden, rising bravado. He grimaced and brought up his fists, intent on defending the crying boy behind him. At least I'm not the one acting like a villain. The 3 bullies grunted in anger, one growing wings while the other's fingers began to lengthen. Bakugo just snarled as he opened both his palms and began causing more explosions, popping noises filling the air. The 3 charged, yelling out war cries in their childish voices. Izuku charged right into them with a battle cry of his own. 50 kilometers away, a pure white vigilante raised the newly defeated villain high in the air to cheers of a grateful crowd. Hero, I will be a hero for you, Oni-chan. I'm home. Welcome home, sweetie. Midoriya and Co stopped, worry on her features as she rushed towards her son. Izuku, what happened? You're all covered in scratches and soot, she fussed, checking on his injuries. Hold on, I'll get the first aid kit. Mom, I'm fine. Izuku groaned, gently pushing past her to settle on the couch. I just had a little fight with Kakan, that's all. Oh dear, I told you that boy was bad news. She continued to look for the first aid kit, objects flying around her in an orbit as she searched with her telekinesis. I don't want you hanging out with him anymore if possible. He's a bad influence. The boy nodded tiredly as he flicked on the television, just in time for his favorite show, Hero News Network. And word on the street is, crime has fallen drastically due to this new vigilante. She's practically unstoppable, roaming all across the country and stopping crime wherever she goes, a newscaster was saying, gesturing excitedly at the camera. Now hang on, why does the public still call her a vigilante? She has proved to be more than worthy of being called a hero in our fine country. The woman beside him piped up, an amused expression on her face. Well, Kamiki-san, an individual needs a hero license to operate legally as a hero, a third newscaster explained, clearing his throat. While the little lady does go around saving people and beating up bad guys, she does it all without a license. It's illegal. Yeah, but it doesn't seem to bother her. The first man babbled, still overcome with excitement. I mean, she always has the same cold expression on her face. In control. Totally cool under pressure, even in combat. Izuku sat up a little straighter, now paying more attention to the television. Even without a name, he knew who the 3 newscasters were talking about. 9 months ago, a certain vigilante had started making waves in the hero community. White as snow and cold as ice, that was the description that eyewitnesses gave as their voices shook with equal parts shock and awe. It started out slow, a few thieves beat up and dumped in front of the police station, people rescued from a house fire downtown. Then things started to snowball. Drug dealers kidnapped and thrown in front of police stations, earthquake survivors rescued from tons of rubble. The vigilante had received many names by the public. Solitude, Jocasta, Guardian Angel, Shakedown, White Queen, Empress, Thundercracker. But the one name that stood out the most was Valkyrie. It seemed only fitting to name the emotionless superheroine after mythical female figures who choose those who may die in battle, and those who may live. In this case, it was who was to be arrested and who was to be rescued. Unsurprisingly, Valkyrie had never objected to her new name. She hadn't spoken a single word to anyone since her first appearance. Now, it's speculated that Valkyrie is mute, the old newscaster was saying, signaling to the younger man who in turn tapped at a button to reveal an image of the vigilante. There she is, the unstoppable Valkyrie. She's never uttered a single word, so it's either she can't speak, or she won't. I'm personally leaning towards the former. He pointed at the static image displaying Valkyrie in her full glory, a featureless body paired with a gorgeous but expressionless face. A little risque, isn't she? The female newscaster highlighted, blushing slightly. I mean, she looks naked. That's the keyword, looks. If you look closely, her body is completely devoid of any parts. I like to compare her look to the 18+ hero, Midnight. They both share a similar fanbase. It's almost as if she's wearing a full-body swimsuit that melds seamlessly with her skin. I think that is her skin. The older man coughed. Are you suggesting she's a mutant type? Could be with that quirk of hers. Also, take a look at those eyes. The image zoomed into Valkyrie's eyes, her pupils milky white and seemingly unseeing. An eerie green glow broadcast from her empty gaze. Her clouded eyes suggest blindness, but eyewitness accounts clearly state she turns her head to look at objects. And her quirk. The lady reporter coughed, interrupting her two colleagues. That's my part to explain, Koyomi-san. Now, about Valkyrie's quirk. The first thing people notice about her is the super strength. Seen time and time again in her battles against villains. Her strength allows her to take down the baddies with sheer brute force. An image of Valkyrie holding up two captured villains by the collars of their shirts appeared on screen, the same deadpan expression still on her face. She's strong, but nowhere as strong as the #1 hero All Might. At least, that's what witnesses have observed. The more prominent power she displays is her apparent invulnerability. Hang on, are you saying she has two quirks? Of course not. It's more likely that she has super strength because of her invulnerability. Here, take a look. A short video clip began to play with Valkyrie standing motionless in the street while a huge mechanical suit charged at her, slamming its massive metal fist right into her face. The vigilante didn't budge an inch as the fist impacted, while the villain within recoiled in pain, clutching his broken hand as pieces of his exosuit arm crumbled away, destroyed. Valkyrie shoved the villain roughly to the ground, mounting the exosuit as she straightened her fingers, plunging her entire hand into his chest armor like a hot knife through butter. Then, she began to peel the outer layers of his armor open, the villain within screaming in terror. The most interesting theory out there is that it's not really super strength. The main theory is that she has some sort of tactile telekinesis surrounding her entire body. It's suspected to be the cause of her invulnerability. The so-called super strength is an extension of the same ability. From what we know, she's completely unaffected by physical forces or any sort of quirk. A hero even tried teleporting her to safety away from a villain's energy blast only for nothing to happen. She just weathered the blow without even batting an eye. If that theory is true, she's simultaneously the unstoppable force and the immovable object. The older man breathed in disbelief. Goodness, if she were an actual hero, she'd easily be in the top 50. Exactly. Now aren't you glad she's on the side of justice? She's so popular she even has her own fan club even if she doesn't acknowledge them. She doesn't acknowledge anything, really. The woman turned to the camera, smiling. For all you viewers at home, stay tuned to Hero News Network. We'll be right back after the break. Up next, a special report on the #1 hero, All Might. Izuku leaned back, humming in thought even as his mother returned with some bandages. Valkyrie, he wondered how she managed to evade capture for so long. According to rumors on the internet, numerous heroes have tried to take her down in an effort to stop her rampant vigilantism, only to find her literally unstoppable as she completely ignored them. Valkyrie only moved to stop villains or rescue innocents from danger. A group of criminals tried pretending to be victims in order to ambush the heroine, only for her to immediately detect the trap and beat them all to a pulp before dumping them off at the nearest police officer she could find. Needless to say, the poor officer was terrified when the vigilante tapped him on the shoulder and unceremoniously dropped a pile of unconscious bodies before him. Her lack of speech and emotion, it didn't make sense. It was almost as if she was a robot instead of an actual human being, following a strict set of orders. Some people have even tried to follow her to find out where she lived or rested, only to report that she never seemed to have a fixed schedule. After following her for a certain period of time, she always seemed to disappear into thin air, gone without a trace as soon as she left their line of sight. Sure, no one had seen it happen, but many suspected she had some sort of teleportation ability as well. What are you watching? Izuku asked, carefully applying some medicine to the bigger scratches as she nursed his wounds. A report on this new vigilante, Mom. The boy suddenly paused, looking at his mother, then back to the static image of Valkyrie tearing apart the exosuit on the screen. Actually, she kind of looks like you. Now that his mother was directly in front of him, he could make an easy comparison. It was easy to see why he would make the connection. Both women were around the same height, and had similar svelte builds. The only difference was the hairstyle and face. Valkyrie's face. She looked somehow familiar, but he couldn't place it. No, mommy's not that pretty or young looking. Our faces are different, see, she huffed, glancing at the screen. In fact, she looks like what you would look like if you were a girl. Izuku stopped, his head swiveling away from the screen to slowly face his mother as a strange suspicion began to form. Mom, yes, sweetie. Did you have a kid before me? A girl? He asked shakily, a trembling finger pointing at the screen. Do I have a secret sister? Why, of course not. The woman sputtered, nearly spilling the medicine all over the couch. Don't be ridiculous. Then do you have a super secret quirk that allows you to be in 2 places at once? If I had such an amazing quirk, I would have left a copy of me to work while I took care of you. She deadpanned, cotton swab in her hand. Now hold still, I need to disinfect the wound. Later that night he dreamed of sailing through the air, the night sky shining with stars as he leapt from rooftop to rooftop with his powerful, snow-white legs. Looking back he could see other heroes trailing behind him, in hot pursuit of something. Must be a big villain to warrant such a huge response from the heroes, he thought. If he'd just looked a little closer he would have realized the pursuers were chasing him, or rather, the being whom he shared a mental link with. The connection between construct and creator broke off as Izuku drifted off into deep sleep, Valkyrie dashing across the rooftops as she reviewed his memories. So Oni-chan stood up for himself today, He was making progress, getting more heroic as the days passed. Not that he needed her help to begin with, but it certainly accelerated the process. The crack of a heavy switch cut through the night sky as a helicopter overhead turned on its floodlights, illuminating the area around her. Give it up, Valkyrie. Your vigilante days are over, we have you surrounded. What to do, what to do. Due to her orders, she couldn't hurt these people. They were a mix of law enforcement and local heroes. This wasn't the city that Oni-chan lived in, so she was unfamiliar with the environment and the quirks of the local heroes. Fighting them would be a waste of valuable time and energy. Time and energy she could spend looking for other villains or people in need of rescuing. Come quietly or there will be trouble. Annoyed, the girl picked up a nearby brick and snapped it in 2, flinging both pieces consecutively at the helicopter with pinpoint accuracy. The first piece shattered the spotlight into 1,000 pieces, while the second smashed into the underhanging megaphone attached to the helicopter's nose. The heroes fired, doing exactly what she wanted them to as multiple blasts of different energies converged on her. The moment the blasts hit her, it produced a blinding glare and explosion, the smoke screen allowing her to cut a hole through the roof she was standing on and dropping into the shopping mall below. As she fell, her form began to change, camouflaging to fit a new disguise, a female law enforcement officer. The police rushed into the building, looking around in vain and never suspecting the vigilante was hidden among their ranks. If anyone had just taken a closer look or paid a little more attention, they would have realized that a certain lady officer looked much too young to be on the force as she stalked off into the night to find new targets, her face cold and expressionless. He can't say anything. He's so lame. Even as a 3rd year, Bakugo smirked, looking back at the shaking boy. He still can't face reality. Midoriya Izuku, 14 and seemingly quirkless, said nothing. This was how the world worked. The weak couldn't stand up to the strong. Even after all these years, he was still being bullied by his former friend. You want to be a hero so bad? I've got a time-saving idea for you. The blonde laughed, a hollow sound that rang in his ears. If you think you'll have a quirk in your next life, go take a swan dive off the roof. Izuku whirled, anger and despair evident on his face as he prepared to cry out. Miniature explosions crackled on the bully's open palm as he displayed his quirk, a dark look on his face. What? He challenged, the explosions growing bigger with each passing second. Izuku was left standing there in the empty classroom as his once best friend left with his cronies, their brutish laughter echoing through the hallway. As fast as his anger started, it faded away just as quickly, leaving the poor boy alone and dejected. He slowly shuffled down the stairs, making his way to the back of the school to retrieve his fallen notebook. It had been scorched and thrown out the window by Bakugo in a fit of smug superiority, landing in a tub of water where it now floated, nibbled at by carp swimming just under the surface. Depression coursed through him as he fished it out of the water, grimacing as scraps of paper sloughed off wetly. Weeks or even months of work damaged thanks to Bakugo. Idiot, he thought. If I'd really jumped, you'd be charged with bullying me into suicide. Think before you speak. Again, his depression and newfound anger seemed to flow away like water down a drain, as if someone had pulled the bath plug. He'd hardly paid attention to it and thought of the phenomenon as some sort of subconscious coping mechanism that he'd developed as a child. Ever since he was told to be an abnormality, strong or overwhelming negative emotions would simply disappear as if they were never there in the first place. At first he thought that this was Quirk, the quirk to cancel out negative emotions, but quickly found out that he could still experience said emotions. Granted, he could still feel sad or angry, but never too much or for too long. He sighed, slowly shuffling out of the school and onto the way home. On the other hand, positive emotions such as happiness or excitement seemed to last a little longer, probably due to the same weird subconscious mechanism. Izuku considered the idea that he was going insane before quickly dismissing the thought, shuddering. Then again, he'd sometimes have these weird dreams where he was sailing through the air, feeling free and powerful. Like a hero, sighing to himself, the boy trudged along the empty road, entering a small tunnel as part of the journey home. In the end, they were just dreams. He'd probably never even figure out what his quirk did until he was old and senile or by accident. That was how it was for most abnormal quirks. The memory of his mother sobbing and apologizing as she hugged him flashed through his mind. Izuku shook his head, clearing his thoughts. "No, Mom. Back then, what I wanted you to say was..." He reached the exit of the tunnel, sunlight hitting his eyes as he raised his head. "That was when I decided," he thought. "I decided not to care what anyone says. To keep my chin up and keep moving forward." Ha ha ha. His grandiose mental monologue was rudely interrupted by a sudden wet noise behind him. A slithering and gurgling that broke him out of his practiced and patented all-might laugh that he'd just started. Turning to look back, he soon wished he hadn't. The creature writhed and flowed like mud, its features oily and slick. Two glowing yellow eyes locked onto him, blinking lazily as they examined the weak, helpless boy before them. A formless body squeezed out from a manhole cover on the ground, dark green tendrils creeping from within the sewers whilst it hoisted itself up. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The living slime rasped, its face flowing like melted wax as it advanced. A villain. Izuku turned and ran, seeing no chance to fight against this new threat. There wasn't even time for a fight or flight instinct to register as he bolted, running as fast as his legs would allow. Too little, too late. The slime pounced, a literal wave of ooze wrapping and engulfing him in the horrible substance. His hero notebook was thrown to the ground as he fell, landing a few feet away. Pure, unadulterated fear coursed through his being as he realized what was about to happen. "Don't worry, I'm just going to take over your body," the villain hissed, slime already starting to enter Izuku's mouth and silencing him. "Calm down, it'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. You'll feel better soon." Valkyrie stood ramrod straight from her vantage point on the corporate office building, eyes staring ever forward while she surveyed the nearby landscape. Her svelte form still remained mostly the same after all these years, having not aged a day. She did grow a little taller, but not by much. So far it had been a good day, no negativity that she could detect in the area. For the past 10 years she'd been moving from area to area, detecting negative emotions to stop incoming crimes and rescue civilians in danger. 10 years she had followed the orders given to her by her Oni-chan. Be a hero. Still, Oni-chan hadn't even called her back, not even once in the past decade despite her doing her best to be a hero. Had she been doing something wrong? She puzzled, feeling confused and hurt. He didn't even let her share a visual link with him to show off her handiwork. She was only able to establish echoes of a connection while he was sleeping. She had so much to show him, but her orders demanded she continued her mission instead of approaching him. There were many lives to be saved and crimes to be stopped, after all. Did he hate her? The sudden, abrupt thought caused her to shudder slightly, a pang of heartbreak echoing within before she quickly swept it away. She was sure that she saved more than enough people to qualify as being heroic. Yet Oni-chan won't even look her way. She even ignored the angry heroes who tried to attack her for unknown reasons over the decade. She didn't understand. Weren't heroes supposed to defeat villains and help the innocent? That's all she'd been doing. Why did some still attack her on sight? It's not like she was harming anyone. Well, not permanently anyway. She fed off her brother's negativity through the mental link. Powerful emotions that she felt were unhealthy and detrimental for him were an energy source for her. It was a symbiotic relationship, beneficial for the both of them. She got her food and he never got to feel too negative. Of course, she'd still let him feel a bit of negativity. She'd learnt that emotions were what made a person, well, a person. She tried consuming positive emotions once, but it was much too sweet and fluffy for her tastes. Plus, it made people sad when she ate up their positive emotions, so that wasn't very heroic. Valkyrie thought back on the angry fireman that had tried to burn her to a crisp so many times in the past few years. How enraged he'd been, and how bitter his anger tasted. Yuck. She'd usually stick to her brother's emotions instead of leeching off random people, but sometimes she got hungry. Once, she got really hungry and started to feed on the fear of villains. She thought she'd quickly learnt that it wasn't very wise to do that, as they just got less scared of her and started fighting back even harder. The vigilante prepared to move, flexing her fingers and taking a final look at the city before she departed to patrol a new area. This was her birthplace, the city where ᴠᴇ'𴟟 created her. Valkyrie liked coming back to this particular city, as strange as it may seem. It calmed her down, let her relax. She crouched and bent her legs, preparing to jump when a sudden spike of fear coursed through her body, causing her to stop. Fear that transferred over her mental link instead of her empathy sense. ᴠᴇ'𴟟 was in danger. Valkyrie spun around to face the source of the fear, propelling herself dozens of meters with a single leap. She wasn't the fastest hero out there, but she could still cover a good distance under pressure. She was lucky she happened to be nearby while he was in danger. Her dear brother had felt fear before, but nothing like this all-encompassing wave of dread. She instantly recognized the type of fear from victims she'd rescued. It was the fear of death. She strode across rooftops, ignoring new negative readings that appeared on her emotional radar. Objective 1, protect ᴠᴇ'𴟟. Objective 2, be a hero. It was clear which one Valkyrie chose. She sped across the rooftops towards her destination, the safety of her creator her current goal. Everything else was put on the back burner. It sure as hell didn't feel better at all. Izuku struggled and panicked, twisting and kicking to no avail. The slime was in his mouth, choking him and stopping his breathing. He couldn't think, he couldn't breathe. Attempts to wrench the foreign substance out of his mouth failed as his fingers sank easily into the gunk, raking right through it like water. You can't grab me. I'm fluid. The living slime leaned in close, eye to eye with its victim as it gave off a malicious smirk. The boy started to flail his legs around, kicking in vain as muffled screaming echoed in the dimly lit tunnel. Thanks for your help, you're my hero, it crooned, now lifting him off the ground. I'd never thought he'd show up in this town. I'm dying. Am I dying? Izuku thought, getting weaker and weaker as his air supply ran out. I'm dying. Somebody. The fallen notebook fluttered open, the page with his sketch of All Might flapping away. Tears began to run down the boy's cheeks. Was this how he was going to die? Killed by a villain in broad daylight? No. Clang. The manhole cover behind them blasted from the road, bouncing off the ceiling and rolling away. Out of the ground a large, muscular arm reached out, the figure hoisting himself up onto the street effortlessly. It's all right now, young man. The villain turned to face the new threat in surprise, Izuku still gripped within his slippery folds. The magnificent visage of All Might stood before the two, a grocery bag in one hand, clenched fist in the other. Instead of his usual colorful costume, he was dressed in a white t-shirt and green pants, clearly out on a casual walk. I am here, the villain snarled, a tendril of slime whipping forward and crashing into where the hero stood just moments ago. All Might easily dodged the blow, closing half the distance in a single step as he cocked his powerful fist back. Texas, a white blur raced into the tunnel opposite All Might, two delicate hands reaching out as they speared into the villain's body from behind, grasping Izuku's shirt tightly. The sludge barely had enough time to scream as Valkyrie tore the semi-conscious boy out from within his slimy prison, shielding him from the incoming blow with her own body. Smash! A pressurized blast of air rushed forward and impacted the slime villain, his body starting to break apart under the sheer force of the blast. Wind pressure. The slime could take no more as it simply splattered everywhere, on the ceiling, on the walls, and all over Valkyrie. She tanked the pressure wave easily, her arms wrapped protectively around the boy even as he drifted off into unconsciousness. All Might, and someone else. Izuku felt a strange comfort as the unknown girl embraced him. It felt somewhat familiar. Oops, All Might said sheepishly, finally noticing the vigilante. Didn't notice you there. Valkyrie wordlessly stood up with her trademark deadpan expression still present on her face, the pieces of slime that stuck to the walls and ceiling stubbornly starting to slick off her like water off a duck's back. He was about to apologize since she didn't look very amused, but then remembered that's how she looked by default. Valkyrie glanced towards the hero, recognizing him as the big cheerful man, All Might, before turning back to her brother. The #1 hero scratched his head gently, unable to think of something to say. It wasn't the first time he'd encountered the strange girl. He'd tried to convince her to register for a hero license multiple times in the past, only for her to ignore him like he was a roadside plant. One time he'd even tried stopping her by putting his hands on her shoulders and she'd simply continued walking, dragging him behind her along the road with little effort. The girl really was something, that's for sure. All Might coughed awkwardly, pulling out an empty soda bottle from within one of his pockets. Would you like to help me clean up this villain, Miss Valkyrie? The girl didn't even bother to look at him as she opted to sit down with her legs tucked in, placing the unconscious boy's head gently onto her lap. A lap pillow, he realized after a few moments. It was odd, to say in the least. Valkyrie never did that for anyone she'd rescued before. If he didn't know any better, he'd say she was worried for him. Okay, I guess I'll have to do this myself then. After painstakingly collecting the pieces of the defeated villain by himself, All Might turned back to the pair, still in the same position he'd left them in. Strolling over, he started to lightly tap on the boy's face. A few taps and Valkyrie had gently pushed his hand away. When he tried again, she smacked his hand, seemingly annoyed though her expression remained even as ever. Look, I'm just trying to wake him up to see if he's alright, All Might explained, unsure of how to react. If you don't mind, can you wake him up? Wordlessly, the girl nodded and craned her neck down slightly, grasping his head with both hands and pressing her forehead against the boy's with closed eyes, as if she was sensing something. A few seconds passed and she separated, nudging his head lightly with both palms. Izuku's eyes slowly fluttered open, blurry vision attempting to focus on the object before him. He felt his back on the ground, his head on something warm and soft. A pillow? Why would there be a pillow in the middle of a tunnel? The past few events suddenly flashed through his mind. The tunnel, the villain, All Might. He blinked owlishly as his vision slowly focused, the whiteness before him focusing into a clear image. A pretty girl stared at him from above, the soft green glow of her eyes reflected in his own. From above. Then that must mean. A hand reached up to feel what his head was resting upon, finding only softness and warmth. The realization started to sink in as the blood began to rush to his face, turning the poor boy redder than a cherry tomato. He was resting his head on a girl's lap. A lap pillow. At that moment, All Might and Izuku witnessed something that nobody had ever seen before, Valkyrie's smile. Valkyrie gave her creator a kind smile, a feeling of satisfaction and happiness welling up deep within her being. He'd grown so much since she'd last remembered. Her brother was absolutely tiny when she'd last seen him, and now he was at least twice as large. She idly wondered how he would react to her saving his life. She soon found out as Izuku backed away in embarrassment, apologizing. I am so sorry, miss. He stopped, finally realizing who she was. Here the poor boy was lost for words as Valkyrie, the infamous vigilante, tilted her head in mild confusion. He'd fainted, and slept like a baby on her lap. The shock was almost too much for him to take as he began to shake. Oh good, I'm glad you're okay. A loud, cheerful voice boomed from behind him. Izuku spun around only to come face to face with All Might. A grin stretched from ear to ear. Valkyrie here must really like you. I've never even seen a different expression on her until now. Izuku began shaking even harder. Calm down, kid. Everything's okay now. Sorry for getting you caught up in my villain fighting. All Might shrugged, his glorious presence causing Izuku's legs to wobble like jelly. Valkyrie glanced between the two with mild interest. I don't usually make mistakes like this, but I was in high spirits on my day off in a new place. The hero laughed loudly, a hand on his forehead. The trademark All Might laugh. But you were a big help. Thanks. To the both of you, of course. All Might proceeded to raise 2 soda bottles up victoriously, displaying the defeated villain within proudly. I captured him safely. Izuku could barely believe his good luck. He got to meet both the #1 hero and the #1 vigilante and help capture a villain, all in the same day. Any more excitement and he'd faint a second time. He made sure not to pinch himself. If this was a dream, he wanted it to continue forever. All Might's teeth seemed to gleam in the afternoon sun as he grinned. Oh, right. An autograph. Where should I? A soft tap on his shoulder drew his attention. Izuku turned to face Valkyrie, who was still smiling, his notebook in her hand. Thanks, 5 to 5 Valkyrie-san. He stuttered, blushing furiously. It was times like these when he hated himself for not being able to talk to girls properly. Opening the notebook, he already found All Might's signature plastered along 2 pages in thick bold lettering. Underneath his thick handwriting was a small V that All Might had somehow persuaded Valkyrie to write. He already signed it. And so did you, Izuku exclaimed, ecstatic. Wow, thank you very much. It'll be a heirloom, a family treasure. Okay. All Might gave him a thumbs up, confident as ever. Well, I need to take this guy to the police. See you again at the other side of the screen. Wait, already. Izuku glanced nervously between All Might and Valkyrie, not sure who to look to. They both seemed to be preparing to leave, All Might crouching down and preparing to jump away, Valkyrie looking skywards with her usual bored expression back on her face. Pros are constantly fighting enemies in time. All Might answered, stretching his leg muscles. Wait, Izuku thought. There are still things I want to ask. Izuku made his choice. Well then, the hero announced, leaping into the sky. I'm counting on your continued support. Then All Might seemed to notice he was just a tiny bit heavier. Wait, he looked down at his leg, only to find the boy clutching at him tightly, holding on for dear life. Hey, 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 hey. And ⴂ Izuku cried out as he flapped in the wind. Let go of me. Your fanaticism is too much. If I let go now, I'll die. Oh, that's true. I have a lot of things I want to ask you directly. Okay, I get it. So close your eyes and mouth. Valkyrie watched as they flew further away into the air, eventually becoming a speck in the distance. Oni-chan did seem rather happy to finally see her. Did that mean she was doing a good job? The girl pondered for a moment before leaping away in another direction in search of new negativity. She had work to do, after all. She'd continue working on her current objective until she was summoned by her brother once more. Midoriya Izuku trudged down the crowded street, barely even feeling the throngs of people pushing past him as they made their daily commute. A sad and sorry sight he was, eyes glued to the ground and head bowed. The young boy thought about what his childhood hero had told him earlier, the simple but brutal truth still sinking in. His sister followed him discreetly from the rooftops, peeking out every so often to take a quick look to make sure he was okay. Valkyrie had initially went off in search of more people to save or stuff to fight, but was inexplicably drawn back by a huge wave of negativity from her brother only minutes after she left, literally pulling her back. In a way, she was hopelessly drawn to her brother now after finally meeting him, much like how iron fillings are drawn to a magnet. She couldn't help but worry and fuss over him, especially when he was so upset now. Ah, Oni-chan, dear, sweet brother of mine. Noting to herself that she wasn't being very heroic right now by sticking to her brother instead of patrolling, Valkyrie supposed it was okay to take a break other than sleeping once in a while. The past 10 years had been so boring that any normal human in her position would have gone insane long ago. Patrol, fight, sleep, repeat. Patrol, fight, occasionally have an existential crisis, sleep, repeat. It wasn't all bad though. She had made a few friends over the years, so sometimes she got to team up with a big group of heroes to bring down a particularly large threat. Those were fun. The girl was yanked out of her nostalgia with another blast of bitter sadness from her brother. The poor boy was practically radiating depression. Chunks of it were eaten away by her, but more rushed in to fill the gap almost instantly. She might as well have been trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon. Sure, she could always absorb his negative emotions from her maximum range, but a part of her wanted to stick around, to see more of him despite how sad he looked right now. She couldn't detect any negativity around here anyhow. The construct stopped, suddenly raising her head. A wave of fresh new emotions had just entered her range, clearly from a distressed mass of people. Valkyrie sensed 3 major emotions as she stood: a surge of sour uncertainty, pockets of bittersweet excitement, and of course, spikes of cold crystalline fear. She turned in alarm, watching as Izuku continued walking towards the disturbance cluelessly. She advanced forward to investigate further, unaware that her brother had noticed the commotion too, and was starting to make his way there to catch a glimpse of what was happening. A pro should always be ready to risk his life. Without power, can one become a hero? No, I should think not. Those were the words that All Might had said to him, utterly shattering his dream of being a hero. The man had pretty much told him to give up and go be a police officer, or something if he wanted to help out the heroes. He didn't want to just help, damn it. He wanted to be a hero, to make a difference. You need to be realistic. It's time to start seriously thinking about your futures. Even as a 3rd year, he still can't face reality. The words still echoed in Izuku's head like a clock tower bell, an almost incessant ringing reminding him of his own worthlessness. Izuku held the still burnt notebook in one hand, and with the other he started to wipe away a stray tear. Don't cry, he told himself. You knew this already, right? This is reality. The young boy continued walking, seemingly unaware of the commotion ahead. It's because I knew that I tried so damned hard, so hard not to see, to ignore reality. Yeah. He finally noticed the commotion when a loud explosion shook him from his moment of self-pity. A crowd was gathered outside a single-lane street, watching as multiple explosions rocked the nearby buildings, shattering glass and concrete. What's going on? A villain? 𝗁𴏗. The sludge villain roared, 2 different yet distinct voices distorting into one horrific echo. Izuku gasped, a hand to his mouth. The villain from before. He must have gotten free somehow. He thought back to the moment where he had clung on to All Might. With the villain stored in a bottle on the hero's pocket, All Might let him go. No, he dropped him, the boy quickly realized. This is my fault. Why are the heroes just standing there? Someone in the crowd yelled. Seems the villains grabbed a middle schooler. They can't do anything till the hostage is safe. Another bystander replied, shaking his head. Whoever's caught is enduring the same pain I did. It's all my fault. Hang in there, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. 𝗳�𴑐𴟐. Another cry of rage, or was it pain? With the villain and his hostages' voices mixing together in a horrific crescendo, it was hard to tell. Someone will save you soon. A hero's bound to come. Without warning, the villain turned to the crowd. 2 pairs of eyes bulged, one belonging to the villain and the other his hostage. Painfully familiar red eyes stared into horrified green ones. 𝗂𝗏. It was the same sludge villain again, but this time he had a hostage. Valkyrie stood on the roof of a nearby building, observing the situation and already starting to form a plan. She noted the damage to the surrounding buildings and hostage, Bakugo Katsuki, the boy who was always hurting her brother with those unkind words of his. She could feel his fear from where she stood. She decided instantly that it was irrelevant who he was, for now he's just someone in need of help. First, she had to free the hostage from the body. It wouldn't be as easy as the last time where she had caught him by surprise. Maybe she should do an emotion drain. No, too slow and risky. Done wrongly, she might accidentally hurt the hostage too since they were connected. She'd have to act fast, distract the villain and rip the boy out. Aim for the villain's eyes. Judging by his power, he'd probably regenerate if she tore them out. Probably. Her entire thought process was completed in a second as she flexed her legs for a jump, preparing to leap down into the fray. Just moments before she was about to, a sharp sensation of fear rushed through her mental link. She watched, simultaneously transfixed and horrified as her brother rushed towards the villain recklessly. But his fear that should have stopped him, she realized too late that she cared more about his safety than he did. Oni-chan, no. Time seemed to slow as her mind went into overdrive. The situation was beginning to rapidly spiral out of control. Valkyrie was torn between heading down there right that instant and engaging the enemy. But Izuku could get hurt in the skirmish, or to drag her brother away to a safe distance and return later. But that would leave the villain to roam free and continue wreaking havoc, an unacceptable result that might cause the nearby bystanders to get hurt. She didn't plan for this, she couldn't. No, not again. She couldn't let him get hurt again. If she didn't have any options left, then she'd make one. The projection darted down, a blur of white starting to close the distance rapidly even as Izuku threw his school bag and its contents into the villain's face, temporarily distracting it as he ducked under a wild swing of its arm. 𝗂𝗏. Izuku lunged, fingers desperately grabbing at the sludge and trying to dislodge his childhood friend from its slimy grasp. Phew. Why? The blonde teen coughed, still choking on pieces of the villain. My legs just started moving. I don't know why, but Izuku cried, the fear evident in his eyes. You looked like you needed saving. The sludge roared, a huge arm already mid-swing as sparks bubbled from his slimy palm. He could use his victim's quirk, Izuku realized with horror. Got him, nosy brat, I'll. Whatever the villain wanted to say next was cut short as a sharp crack resonated through the air, followed shortly by a wet splat. The young boy opened his eyes to see that the top half of the villain's head had disappeared, and an unsightly green stain was now sliding off wall a few meters away. Valkyrie stood over Izuku, a graceful arm outstretched in a backhand stance while her other arm had tanked the explosive swing meant for him. Even as she started to tear Bakugo out of the now stunned sludge, Izuku was putting together of what just transpired. She had just slapped the top of the villain's head clean off. The girl pulled the coughing hostage just in time to shield both students from another crazed, flailing blow. You again, you crazy bitch. That kid was my ticket to beating him. The sludge screeched, his mouth flapping away while a pair of slimy eyes glared at her from the ground as they struggled to rejoin the main body. The villain could control his body remotely even without a head, just as she suspected. It was how his pieces could form back together in the first place. Valkyrie grabbed both boys and leapt back, prioritizing their safety. For Izuku, she held him under her arm gently, while she slung Bakugo over her shoulder like a sack of bricks. Instead of fighting, it would be best to retreat now since she was carrying 2 civilians. No matter how much she pummeled the sludge, he'd probably just reform rapidly unless she tore him into itty-bitty shreds and scattered them all over the place. But she couldn't retreat back into the crowd, that would endanger them too. The monster's eyes found their way back to the main body, sliding their way up his waist even as he lunged for the vigilante. With both her hands occupied, she raised her leg high into the air and stomped, the asphalt rupturing upwards in massive chunks and stopping the sludge's advance temporarily. Before she could do anything else, a loud voice bellowed and caught her attention. You've helped me again, both of you. A huge figure dashed past, his mighty back now encompassing their vision. All Might shifted his head back slightly to look at Izuku, ever-confident grin on his face. Thank you, young man. I told you what was required of a great hero, but I see now that I wasn't practicing what I preached. All Might, Izuku cried from Valkyrie's grip, his voice full of hope. The great hero dashed forward, his huge fist clenched and brimming with pure power. A pro should always be ready to risk his life. That's the true test of a hero. The villain howled with fury, enlarging to maximum size. All Might, a muscular arm reared back and shot downward, aiming low. 𝗬𝗏𝗟𝗡. The blast of air pressure that followed was almost unreal. It accumulated in an enormous wave that literally blew the villain away, scattering him across the area. Nearby, the various heroes braced themselves against the gust, Mount Lady shielding the nearby civilians in a protective cradle she formed with her arms. Valkyrie stood still as a statue but held on tight to the two boys as their clothes flapped wildly in the wind. As an added precaution, she exercised her power, extending it to the two boys and temporarily imbuing them with her invulnerability. A tornado formed from air pressure ripped through the sky, a testament to All Might's immense strength. To the crowd's amazement and wonder, All Might's punch caused a rising air current that shifted the clouds, causing tiny little raindrops to fall. Then they started to cheer for their great hero, a cacophony of hope and joy echoing down the now battle-scarred street. You go, All Might. You see that? He changed the weather with a single punch. Amazing. That's All Might for you. Valkyrie blinked, watching the raindrops fall and the subsequent cheering of the crowd. A small feeling of envy regarding All Might's raw power welled up within her, but she dismissed it easily, opting to tend to her two charges instead. She scanned 𝗵𝘃𝗏 quickly to make sure he was okay, then dumped him off her shoulder unceremoniously after realizing he was perfectly fine. The angry boy yelled out in protest but then started to cough, clearing the remaining sludge in his throat. Needless to say, she didn't like him very much. For Izuku, she put him back onto his feet gently, then dragged him a few meters away, and started to inspect him carefully for any damages. Everyone else was still busy cheering and crowding around All Might, the majority not noticing the pair. I'm fine, really. Izuku started to protest, but to no avail. The taller girl prodded at his body softly, then started to check his head for any bleeding, her slim fingers running through his hair. The boy fidgeted nervously, a warm blush already building up in his cheeks. It was the second time now that he'd met the girl, and it didn't help that she was gorgeous. But her behavior, it reminded him a little of his mother fussing over him when he was younger, or a loving big sister he never had. It felt almost nostalgic in a strange way. Maybe he was a weirdo for thinking like that. Valkyrie made a low purring noise from her throat, satisfied that her brother was okay as far as she could see. To Izuku's surprise, she then formed a knife hand and smacked his head softly. WWA. A flurry of emotions was rushing through the girl, each cycling to the surface of her mind. Worry that Izuku might have been hurt, relief that he was unhurt, anger that he'd thrown himself into danger, pride that he'd been so selfless, love that he'd been so brave. She leaned in close, her expression stony. She wasn't smiling this time, feeling a little upset at both herself and him. 𝗬𝗏𝗟. The words came out as barely even a whisper, and Valkyrie leaped away before Izuku could properly register what he'd heard. Shortly afterward, All Might launched into the air in a different direction after talking to the reporters while the heroes started to rush in to clean up the mess. Izuku blinked in confusion and stood stock still even as a medic shone a flashlight into his eyes. She called me an idiot and something else. I didn't quite hear that last part. It was later in the evening when Valkyrie felt another surge of sadness from her brother, this time mixed with a strange combination of gratitude and pride. At first she was alarmed and wanted to make her way back to him, but then realized it must have been something positive if he felt pride. She decided to check it out when she went to sleep. The girl closed her eyes, feeling her physical body evaporate like smoke as her stream of consciousness made its way back into her brother's mind via their mental link. When she opened them again, she found herself in Izuku's mind, a strange landscape of colors and shapes that ebbed and flowed like the ocean waves. Here she could express her emotions all she wanted in her mental form, unlike her physical form which had trouble even making faces. Here she was free. Humming to herself, she skipped her way to his latest memories and accessed them, reviewing what had happened earlier that day. She couldn't access all of his memories, but snippets of it were already enough to piece together a story. It was the same for his emotions. She couldn't feel every single emotion via their link. Stronger ones were more easily felt. A quick fast forward of his memory fragments told her everything she needed to know. Izuku had met All Might. His true form, that is. That was unexpected. What came next made her feel a strange sort of pain, jealousy and fear mixed with joy and doubt. All Might had offered Izuku to be his successor, to inherit his power that had been passed down from generation to generation, one for all. On one hand, she was happy that her brother was finally getting a hold of a proper quirk just like he'd always wanted. But on the other, her heart ached with loss. Was this how it felt to lose? To be fair, Izuku probably didn't know of her true nature, let alone his link with her. Still, it pained her to imagine that he didn't need her anymore, now that he had power of his own to wield. Wasn't this what she wanted? For him to be a hero, to be happy. But, what about me, Ōnii-chan? She wanted to approach him, wanted to reveal herself so much over the last 10 years. But she'd seen for herself that drawing attention to oneself would ultimately lead to people you knew getting involved, or worse, hurt. Time and again she'd seen it in both heroes and villains, with their monologues and attention-seeking. She'd sacrificed her own happiness just to make sure that Izuku was safe. Originally she'd planned to reveal herself and all her deeds to him when he was a little older, but now she didn't know what to do. A pessimistic vigilante had once said the same to her, that happiness was death to people like them. A family would make her vulnerable, hesitant, weak. She would put them in danger, just like he did. To be a hero, you must be alone. No, no, no. She shook her head, refusing to remember those words he had said. This was different. Ōnii-chan would have power now. He could protect himself now, right. But still, it wasn't right for her to keep babysitting him if he got a hold of power, especially a formidable quirk like All Might's. He finally had a chance to be a hero. A treacherous, naughty little thought flitted across her mind. I don't want Ōnii-chan to get that power. I want him all for myself. Ōnii-chan's mine. Mine, mine, mine. She shook her head again to clear away that horrible way of thinking. That wasn't, she had no right to do that. All she wanted was for Izuku to be happy. That was enough for her. What about my happiness? The rising doubt and confusion clouded her mind, her mental form curling into a ball in Izuku's mindscape. The girl decided to go to sleep, thinking that she would cross that bridge when it was time. It wasn't working. Months had passed since then, and yet she still wasn't sure what to do. Ever since then she had argued with herself on what was the best course of action, questioning her own existence more than usual. Every now and then between her patrolling she went back to Izuku's mind for rest and observed his training, each time getting prouder yet feeling more worried. The boy was almost ready to inherit All Might's power. With power like that, he would eventually achieve his dream of becoming a hero. He wouldn't need her anymore, would he? The more she thought about it, the more her phantom heart ached with sadness. Why did she have to feel this way? Shouldn't she be happy that Izuku finally got a chance to be a hero? She'd faced some of the strongest and deadliest villains without even batting an eye. But why was it that she felt so much fear and pain at being unneeded by her dear brother? Her entire purpose for existing was to be a hero, but she was now unsure if she still had a reason to exist with Izuku's nearing inheritance of One for All. He could go and be a hero himself. Valkyrie looked to the faraway mountains, a sudden thought occurring to her. Maybe she should seek out advice from a friend instead of tackling the situation all by herself. She should have thought of that earlier. Deep within the secret mountain base, alarms started to blare with deafening volume, indicating that someone or something had tripped the multiple perimeter defenses. 3 sets of feet thundered down the hallway as they made their way to the control center, a woman already manning the console and flicking on several switches. What have we got? The muscular man asked, hunching over the petite woman and eyeing the screens warily. Unknown bogey approaching fast. It's tripped the laser defenses and is nearly here. This is no wild animal we're dealing with. A vehicle. Radar's not picking anything up. Thermal imaging returns 1 unit, closing in. It's plowing straight through the mini force field barriers. Whatever it is, it's tough and not stopping. Another woman behind them cursed loudly, taking her position on another console as her fingers began flying over the keyboard in a series of rapid taps. A villain? Why here? A third woman questioned, cycling through the different cameras. This is a rescue base. There's nothing valuable they'd want to steal. Medical supplies, rescue equipment. A lot of important stuff in here. Who knows, maybe they just have a grudge against us. The man grumbled, already suiting up in his magnificent costume and preparing for battle. Whatever it is, we can't let them take the equipment. We need it to help. A loud beeping started, and the lights in the room began to flash red. Bogies approaching the main gate at high speed. Prepare for impact. The team of 4 hunkered down, each anticipating a massive impact against the near impenetrable steel doors from the unknown. Except absolutely nothing happened. A small voice crackled over the intercom, soft and nearly inaudible. Cat lady, it's me, open the door please. 4 set of eyes peeked up at the main screen, and a muscular arm reached up onto the console to cycle through the cameras until they found the one that was situated at the main gate. The screen showed a young woman with pale white skin, standing before the doors and waiting for a reply. Is that who I think it is? Valkyrie started knocking on the titanic mechanical doors, each knock shaking the entire building. Dust started to drift off the ceiling within the base as vibrations resonated through the building. Boom, boom, boom. Cat lady, open the door please. The vigilante chanted in a sing-song voice, her expression still neutral. Every eye in the room turned to one particular woman, who grimaced sheepishly. Well, you're the only one, she responds to verbally, right. You talk to her. Her teammates chided and pushed her into the main seat of the control room, giving her control over the communication systems. Testing, testing, is this thing on? Valkyrie did seem to hear her, for she looked around until she found a camera near the door, then gave it a nod. Right, first of all, it's 𝗵𝗃, not cat lady. You're making me sound like one of those old women who keep a dozen cats. Second, what are you doing here, Valkyrie? It's 3 in the morning. I need help. The girl answered, features cold as ever. Her reply stunned the rest of the team. Never had the strange vigilante ever asked for help, let alone approach them in the first place. This must have been something serious. Is it a disaster? Our emergency surveillance program hasn't picked up anything yet. Anyways, we're ready to roll in. No villain, no disaster. Valkyrie shook her head. Huh? Then why'd you come here? 𝗵𝗃 asked, her confusion carrying over the loudspeaker. I need help. The girl repeated. You said to come to you if I needed help. 𝗵𝗃's 3 teammates shot her a look, which told her all that was needed to be said. The blonde woman groaned painfully, her head in her hands. Okay, I did say that last time we met, but you can't just barge in here. This is a super secret rescue base, you know. Valkyrie looked at the camera, then back to the supposedly impenetrable doors. Open the door please. Well, apparently she didn't care if it was the National Bank of Japan or a super secret rescue base. The girl stubbornly knocked on the door again, a little harder this time. Small shockwaves reverberated through the structure with each knock, shaking the building's very foundations. What if I can't open these doors for you? I mean, how did you find these place anyways? This is a classified location, the heroine said hurriedly, hesitating. Open, or I'll open them for you, Valkyrie said quietly. They got their alarms bells ringing. Those high-security doors cost a fortune, and from what they'd seen of Valkyrie, she could pretty much tear through them effortlessly if she really wanted to. Sighing, 𝗵𝗃 looked to her team for confirmation before reaching over to flick a switch. Fine, but only because I owe you, got it. The heavy, multi-ton doors started to slide open and Valkyrie strode in casually like she owned the place. Little did they know she could recognize certain emotional signatures of people she remembered, which was how she found them. Well, I suppose we should meet our guest. I'll go prepare some tea, the muscular man announced curtly, starting to make his way to the kitchen. An awkward silence fell over the 3 women, 2 of them already waiting for an explanation. You know, when you said you can speak to the Valkyrie, I thought you were joking. I mean, I've only heard rumors of her speech as an urban myth. So you guys are friends, huh? She's your pal, your chum. The brunette teased. It's not like that, Mandalay. 𝗵𝗃 replied, the trio marching over to the main entrance to meet the vigilante. We met during that big earthquake rescue a few months back and she took a liking to me. I mean, I don't even know why. She helped me out a lot during the rescue and we worked well together. I told her to come to me if she needed any help then. Didn't expect her to bring that detail up now. Haven't seen her since. To be fair, I do owe her for the help. Give me a little more detail. The team leader requested, looking apprehensive now. I need to know what we're dealing with just in case. She came across one of my Earth Beast puppets during the rescue effort. 𝗵𝗃 explained, their heels clicking against the metal floor as they walked. It scared a young boy nearby, and she started to tear it apart. She probably thought my Earth Beast was some sort of villainous minion, and was trying to protect the kid. Took me a while to convince her I was here to help, but after that she helped me locate the remaining trapped civilians. Any thoughts on why she's here, Ragdoll? Mandalay asked, checking to make sure all her equipment was there in the rush to put in on earlier. Everyone in their team were dressed in matching cat-themed costumes that included offensive paw gloves with retractable claws. Never hurt to be too cautious. No clue, Ragdoll shrugged, tapping at her chin with an extended claw. My search quirk doesn't work on her, remember. Mandalay groaned, rubbing her head. Perfect. An indestructible vigilante in our home that's immune to quirks. Let's just hope she's peaceful. Don't worry, she only attacks villains, 𝗵𝗃 assured. Or people and things she thinks are evil. The 3 women finally made it to the living room, main hall, where the vigilante was waiting. Their leader took a deep breath and stepped forward, looking to her teammates and sharing a nod. Okay, let's do this. Locking on target with our sparkly eyes. Mandalay started, flourishing her claws. Our helping paws will pounce your way. Ragdoll cried, jumping happily, springing suddenly from out of nowhere. A deep voice rumbled from within the nearby kitchen. "We're cute cats with stingers," 𝗵𝗃 finished, gesturing to her audience. Wild pussycats. All 4 members of the team announced simultaneously, the 3 women taking positions in fabulous poses in their cat-themed costumes while their 4th member was absent. Valkyrie stared at them blankly, blinking. "Hello, it's our new intro. What do you think, eh?" Ragdoll grinned, even as the girl continued staring at her without a word. "Tough crowd. She really does only respond verbally to certain people. But hi Valkyrie." 𝗵𝗃 cleared her throat awkwardly. "What do you need help on?" The vigilante paused, sniffing the air momentarily like she smelled something. "Personal advice," 𝗫𝗏 groaned, while Ragdoll started to giggle uncontrollably. "You came all the way here into the mountains, woke us up at 3 a.m., activated every alarm on your way here, infiltrated our secret base, just so you could get some personal advice." Valkyrie nodded, then without warning started wandering towards the kitchen. A vague question of what she was doing crossed 𝗵𝗃's mind but died on her lips when she realized Tiger, their 4th member, was still in the kitchen making tea. "I know you look like that naturally, but can you at least put on some clothes or something? There's a man in the kitchen," the blonde remarked exasperatedly. Actually, Tiger was a woman turned into a man via Quirk, but that was irrelevant now. Plus, it would help to train the clueless girl for future interactions. 𝗵𝗃 doubted that Valkyrie herself knew how many guys she was making hot and bothered with that alluring form of hers. The girl stopped and tilted her head in apparent curiosity, looking at 𝗵𝗃 with that same blank expression she always wore. She looked down at her own featureless body, then at 𝗵𝗃, or more specifically, 𝗵𝗃's costume. The older woman instantly got what she was thinking and covered herself with her hands, a scandalized look crossing her features. "I didn't mean mine. You can't have these, make some of your own." Valkyrie tilted her head again, this time to express her confusion. "Don't give me that look, I know you can shapeshift. I saw you change to a smaller size to rescue someone trapped in the debris." 𝗵𝗃 huffed, pouting. "I also saw you blend into the crowd when we left by making some clothes of your own. Why don't you do that now?" A moment passed and Valkyrie was suddenly clothed in a perfect copy of 𝗵𝗃's costume, complete with cat ears, paws, and tail. The strange thing was, it looked better on her than it did on 𝗵𝗃 herself. The sky blue costume complemented her snow-white skin nicely, the girl twisting around to check herself out. 𝗫𝗏 and Ragdoll exchanged glances, then nodded in approval. "Wahey, you can't wear that. Only official members of our team can wear that uniform, it's copyrighted. Change to something else," 𝗵𝗃 protested, slightly jealous of the other girl's youthful figure. "Okay, cat lady." The moment those words left her mouth, Valkyrie shrank right before their very eyes, now taking the form of a child in an oversized hoodie that stretched down to nearly touch her knees. Her hair transformed to jet black, long locks shortening in the span of a few seconds. Her skin was no longer snow-white but instead a healthy, normal color. Light blue pupils gazed at them passively, a surprisingly normal color considering that they used to be milky white with a green glow. The women stared in silent fascination, until Ragdoll started squealing in excitement at the completed transformation. "Oh my god, she's so cute." She ran up to the now younger girl and started rubbing her head gently, cooing all the while. "I didn't know she could do that." "Me either," 𝗫𝗏 said, still staring in abject disbelief. "Careful, Ragdoll, she just looks younger. For all we know you two could be the same age." "But look at her cute little face. Tiny," Ragdoll gushed, darting around the girl manically. "I didn't mean never mind." 𝗵𝗃 muttered. "Why must you appear before me in that ridiculous form? Why do you go on rescue missions dressed as a cat?" The girl countered flatly. "Just as that form is comfortable for you, this form is comfortable for me." The now miniature Valkyrie continued to wander past them and towards the kitchen, just as Tiger rounded the corner with a huge tea tray in his arms. He didn't see her due to their massive difference in height, almost colliding with the girl until the last second. In his rush to avoid her, he dropped the tray, deftly catching it before it hit the ground in an impressive demonstration of his flexibility. "What the who?" The heavyset man didn't get his answers as the tiny girl strolled past him, stopping momentarily to sniff at his tea before finally reaching the kitchen. There, she floated up onto the marble countertop and reached for a large porcelain jar, opening it effortlessly and retrieving the hidden treasure within. Without a word, Valkyrie stuck her fingers into the jar and pulled out a small sugar cube, popping it into her mouth and chewing slowly. The pussycats watched her from the kitchen entrance, bewildered. "Is that?" Tiger began. Yup, why is she so? He struggled to find the words, the 𝗬𝗏 now cradled in his arms protectively. Small. Because 𝗵𝗃 told her to put on some clothes. What does that have to do with anything? More importantly, she's eating all my sugar cubes. Ragdoll exclaimed, shaking 𝗵𝗏 back and forth. She can't do that. Yeah, pretty rude. She's almost like an actual kid, if you think about it. Throwing a tantrum on our doorstep. Eating our food. I wouldn't be surprised if she starts raiding our fridge next. 𝗵𝗏 deadpanned. No, I mean she'll rot all her teeth if she eats that much sugar at one go. After a few minutes of persuasion, the team managed to get everyone into the surprisingly spacious living room where they now sat in a rough circle on cushy-looking sofas. Valkyrie opted to sit on 𝗵𝗃's lap with the jar still clutched tightly in her hands, occasionally reaching inside for another sugar cube. Okay, we're all here, 𝗵𝗃 chuffed, holding the smaller girl gently while sinking into the comfy sofa. Is that English on your hoodie? And where did you even learn such weird eating habits anyways? She was of course referring to her little sugar cube snacks. Valkyrie could eat the cubes easily enough. Their mildness was nothing compared to the sweet emotions she could consume just from people being in her radius. This was the only way she could taste sweetness without it being too overwhelming. She had picked up the habit of eating sugar cubes whole from a vigilante known as 𝗵𝗏, the first person who realized she wasn't actually human and taught her how to speak properly. All this from him noticing that she wasn't breathing, which was why she couldn't speak in the first place. 𝗵𝗏 wore this weird monochrome mask that shifted into symmetrical shapes on his face like ink on paper, hence the name. They'd first met many years ago when she detected his never-ending pit of negative emotions and followed hungrily like a child following a breadcrumb trail. 𝗵𝗏 soon discovered her meddling when he gradually felt better each day, and outright hated her when he finally realized she was treating him as a walking snack, but quickly forgave her when he noticed she literally had the mentality of a child. He was an interesting man, paranoid and even cruel in some respects, but someone who held on to his principles. Uncompromising. Made her question if he was an actual good guy or not, but in the end they found themselves as acquaintances. Not close enough to be friends, but pretty close. Long story short, in the time they spent together as a pseudo-team he taught her plenty of things including fighting techniques, citing that one day her invulnerability may not be able to protect her. Too bad he didn't teach her anything in the emotion department, seeing as he himself was pretty much dead inside. The last she saw him he was headed to America, in an attempt to find the big blue bastard that sent me to this universe in the first place. Whatever that meant, she wished him well and sent him on his way. But that's a story for another time. While Valkyrie was busy thinking on her past, Ragdoll had begun poking at the girl's childish cheeks, laughing musically when 𝗵𝗃 shooed her away gently. You know, 𝗵𝗃, you kind of look like a mother when she's in your lap like that. It's adorable. 𝗵𝗃 flushed, her cheeks tinged red in embarrassment. That's not. Before she could answer, the blonde found a sugar cube prodding gently at her mouth. Valkyrie held it in an angle, apparently trying to feed her. The girl insisted, sugar cube nestled in her tiny fingers. The older blonde turned an even brighter shade of red, trying to remind herself that the child before her was much older than she looked. Both 𝗵𝗏 and Ragdoll smiled brightly at that, the latter even pulling out a camera from seemingly nowhere and taking a quick snapshot. Tiger just grinned slightly, content at the scene. 𝗵𝗃 eventually relented and popped the cube into her mouth, her face scrunching up as the sharp sweetness stung her taste buds. I don't know how you can eat these, she grimaced, reaching for a warm cup of tea to wash the taste down. So what personal advice did you come here for, anyway? The girl thought for a moment on how to answer the question. She didn't feel like revealing the existence of her brother. She had to call him something different, then. I'm scared that my master doesn't want me anymore. 𝗵𝗃 spat out her tea in a spray of disbelief, coughing and sputtering while the other three pussycats looked on with various stunned expressions. She came to us for relationship advice of all things, and on such a delicate topic. Really? What? She shrieked, shifting the girl on her lap slightly so they were now face to face. Master, what do you mean by that? She couldn't believe it. Such a sweet, innocent, young girl was into such depraved play. Wait a minute. This isn't her real form. Master is master. I serve master. Technically she wasn't lying. Izuku was her creator, and she was his construct. Master and servant. She just preferred to think of him as a brother. Serve? You mean you do what he tells you? Valkyrie nodded, thinking of her first and only order. Be a hero, one that she continued following to this day. All three women blushed fiercely, their imaginations already running wild with all sorts of unhealthy thoughts. Master and servant play. Oh boy. Tiger instead opted to down his tea, listening with renewed interest. Okay. So, why do you think he doesn't want you anymore? It was hard for 𝗵𝗃 to understand why someone wouldn't want a shapeshifting, unstoppable metahuman at their every beck and call, especially one so cute by default. Maybe it was her lack of facial expressions. The girl clearly had emotions, but most likely had trouble expressing them. Valkyrie scratched her head, thinking of how to describe Izuku's inheritance of One for All without revealing too much information. He's gonna get something better soon. Better than me. Ragdoll held a paw over her mouth in a scandalized expression while Mandalay turned even redder, fidgeting in her seat. Tiger coughed, then began to pour himself another cup of tea. Listen, Valkyrie 𝗵𝗃 started, her own face turning a bright shade of red. I don't know what kind of relationship you and your master are in, but I'm sure he wouldn't abandon you just because he found someone better. At least I hope he wouldn't. The girl tilted her head, waiting for the older woman to continue. I mean, can you tell me what kind of person your master is? Valkyrie did not hesitate to reply as Izuku's good qualities were listed in rapid fire. Brave, selfless, kind, generous, caring. You really look up to him, huh? 𝗵𝗃 said. This person, do you love him? Yes, in a pure, sisterly way, of course. But 𝗵𝗃 didn't need to know that. Does he love you? At that, the girl didn't answer. Until the sludge incident, Izuku had never even met her face to face and likely barely even knew of her existence. How was she supposed to answer? 𝗵𝗃 sighed, stroking the girl's hair gently. Look, kid, can I call you kid? I mean, you're literally a kid now. Never mind. NN. The girl didn't shy away from the physical contact, instead leaning into the older woman's bosom further. She snuggled into the softness, feeling the warmth of 𝗵𝗃's body through her clothes. At times like these, what you need to do is go talk to him. I mean, from what you're implying, you guys are close, yet far. It's such a weird relationship, but hey, I'm not one to judge. You gotta go talk to him to find out how he feels about you, or else you just end up with an unrequited love that'll never bloom. Fight for what you want, what you believe in. If you don't even try, you'll just be giving up without a fight. 𝗵𝗃 took a moment to catch her breath, then hugged the smaller girl tightly. I should know. Valkyrie looked up, her face still cold and stony as if it was carved out of marble. Her eyes, however, told a different story, for 𝗵𝗃 could see a sort of childish fear within them. But what if he doesn't want me anymore? The blonde thought for a moment, then took a deep breath and gave her opinion. Then you move on. It's not the end of the world. But whoever this guy is, he sounds like a good person from your description, so I don't think he'll just abandon you. Which begs the question of why he would find someone else in the first place, the two-timing scumbag son of a. The vigilante tilted her head, suspecting that 𝗵𝗃 had somehow misunderstood her somewhere along the line. But so far her advice was pretty decent, so she'd keep quiet and listen. Meanwhile, 𝗵𝗃 was busy getting upset on whoever would cheat on such an innocent girl. Knuckle-headed imbecile. Either way, that's all the advice I can give you. I mean, I was never really good at this relationship thing, so I can't guarantee anything. But I want him all to myself. Oh, 𝗵𝗃 raised an eyebrow, then coughed awkwardly. Maybe the girl wasn't as innocent as she looked. Well, kid, that's the thing, isn't it? You want him. That implies you want to own him, have him all to yourself. But that isn't right. You can't just own people like they're objects. It may make you happy, but you gotta consider how they would feel. It's a delicate balance of feelings. Relationships sure are complicated, eh? She thought for a moment of what Izuku would think if she kept babying him all his life, stealing away his opportunity to grow. It felt wrong, like she was taking away his future. It was the same wrongness she would feel if she had absorbed too much of his emotions, leaving him a lifeless husk. Not that she'd ever do that to her dear brother, but still. She just couldn't take away his chance to be a hero, especially when he'd looked up to heroes all his life. 𝗵𝗃 was right. Valkyrie looked up at the older woman's determined face, then nodded slowly. Yeah, she resolved to talk with Izuku right after her nap later, already thinking of what she was supposed to say. Finally approaching him purposely. She didn't know how she was supposed to feel about that. Out of curiosity, do you call your master a master? The blonde asked nervously, hoping to find out more information about this mysterious individual that ruled over the girl. Maybe kick his ass if he made her cry. The girl seemed to ponder the question before looking her in the eye and giving a direct answer. I call him ōnii-chan. Valkyrie hoped they wouldn't be able to get too much information out of that. 𝗵𝗃. This time it was Tiger who spat out his tea mid-sip, coughing out the remaining liquid as he tried to comprehend what he just heard. Oh my goodness. All three women were speechless, already trying to imagine what sort of pervert this guy was. In their heads they were already imagining this master making poor Valkyrie shapeshift into her younger form occasionally for whatever kind of weird act they had going on. Then again, it wasn't their right to judge the relationships of others, so they just held their tongues instead of objecting. That's unique, 𝗵𝘃𝗍 finally said, her teeth grinding together slowly. No doubt she was already thinking of plans to destroy this guy if she ever got the chance to meet him. He's important to you. A nod, followed by the continued chewing of the sugar cube in her mouth. The blonde sighed, patting her on the shoulder. Different strokes for different folks, then. Geez, I don't even why you came to me for advice in the first place. To be honest, all my relationships have been, well, catastrophic. Why me? Another tilt of the head. The answer was surprisingly obvious. The girl considered 𝗵𝘃𝗍 a friend. Then again, she could count the number of people she actually considered friends on one hand alone. She answered appropriately by pointing a small finger at the older woman's face. You're my friend. 𝗵𝘃𝗍 found herself smiling, then chuckled. Thank you. I'm flattered, really. But I mean, everyone knows you only talk to certain people in all your years of vigilantism. So what drew you to me in the first place? What made me so special that you wanted to speak with me? Valkyrie pondered the question for a moment, thinking back to the first time she'd met the eccentric hero. Her bravery and passion in helping people, her kindness. It all matched the criteria of what she thought of as a true hero. Also, 𝗵𝘃𝗍 kind of reminded her of Izuku's mom, 𝗵𝘃. But how was she to phrase that? If Izuku was her master, then was his mother the master of her master? Master's master, grandmaster, how confusing. Ultimately, she decided to play it straight. You remind me of Ba-chan, she said simply, still chewing on a sugar cube. Ba-chan. 𝗵𝘃𝗍 blinked, then started to protest. Oh Ba-chan, I remind you of your grandmother. Hey, I'm not that old. Ragdoll burst out laughing, while Mandalay held back a giggle. Tiger just sipped at his tea again. With that, the girl got up from her position, then placed the now half-empty jar she was holding back onto the coffee table. Turning to face the pussycats, she gave them all a deep bow, followed by a small wave. Thank you, cat lady. It's 𝗵𝘃𝗍. Valkyrie paused for a moment, then waved again. Bye-bye, 𝗵𝘃𝗍. Then she was gone, vanished into thin air, whisked away to who knows where. It was as if she was never there in the first place, every trace of her gone except the half-empty sugar cube jar she'd left in her wake. The wild pussycat stared at where she'd been just moments ago, still contemplating everything they'd just experienced. So, she can teleport. That's nice to know, Tiger finally said, sipping at his third cup of tea. Strangely enough, he was the only one that drank the tea he made. No sense in letting it go to waste. I don't think it's that. If she could teleport, why didn't she just teleport her way back into the base? Maybe she has some sort of limitation. A guy I knew had line of sight teleportation. The team looked at each other, each shrugging in turn. Well, that happened. It's time to go back to bed, Ragdoll announced cheerfully. Night girls, are we seriously gonna ignore that a highly wanted vigilante just asked us for relationship advice? Well, asked 𝗵𝘃𝗍, but still, Mandalay remarked in disbelief, watching as Ragdoll grabbed a pillow off the sofa on the way back to her bed. Yeah, it's surprising to know that even untouchable heroes like Valkyrie have problems of their own. Real eye-opener. Tiger turned on the television and swapped through the channels until he found a football match. Maybe she's just a normal girl under that title of #1 vigilante. A little weird, but normal overall. Shouldn't you be going back to sleep, Tiger? I'm a man. I can do whatever I want. The muscular hero sipped at his tea, holding the teacup with his pinky extended. Besides, I don't feel like sleeping now. Mandalay and 𝗵𝘃𝗍 shared a look, then rolled their eyes and threw a pillow each at the lounging hero before going back to their respective beds. Men, eat this, eh? Doesn't matter what it is you eat, as long as it contains my DNA. Now hurry. All Might awoke to find himself in a strange landscape of colors and shapes, the ground beneath his feet shifting, yet stable. There were trees and widespread plains of grass, but also empty desert sands and deep oceans mixed together in a kaleidoscope of impossible environments. It was beautiful in an alien, abstract way. One moment he was at the beach standing before young Midoriya with a strand of his hair, and the next he was here. He looked down at himself, surprised to find that he was in his muscle form. He practiced switching between his two forms and found that the transition was effortless, something that was clearly impossible. He didn't even feel any fatigue when changing, which meant he didn't have his time limit here. How had he fallen asleep and end up here? Wasn't the UA entrance exam in 3 hours? What was this place? �ᴂ All Might spun around, only to come face to face with a woman he knew long ago, her form faded and translucent like a ghost. 7 glowing motes of ethereal light orbited around her head like a halo, making her look like an angel from heaven. 𝗵𝗵 All Might breathed, unable to believe his own eyes. I thought you were dead. I am genius. The previous wielder of One for All scoffed, a wide grin already appearing on her features. He hadn't seen that familiar grin in decades. He wanted to give a greeting hug, but that translucent form made him think twice. Maybe he would pass right through her. Glad to see you're still as smart as when I last saw you. The hero blinked, squinting his eyes at her translucent figure. He then looked back at his own body and started patting himself to make sure he was still solid. Am I dead? All Might whispered, looking down at his muscular body and shifting over to his true form for comparison. Are you a ghost? I'm no ghost, and you're an idiot. If you're here, it means you've passed the torch. Another grin, this time milder. Midoriya Izuku. He's a good kid. I don't understand. Take a look around you. Where do you think we are? The pair viewed the landscape, eerily beautiful yet completely alien to them. Nana sighed, then patted her successor on the back. Let me give you a hint. You're not the real Toshinori. All Might glanced at her in confusion, then at his thin hands. He flexed them experimentally, forming a fist and testing each finger individually. I feel pretty real. Well, sorry to break it to you, but you're not. You're a fragment of the real Toshinori that was passed along with the power. A piece of his soul, if you will. The man's eyes widened, finally realizing what she was implying. He then took another look around before coming back to face her. Then this is ding ding ding. Correctamundo. We're in the mind of One for All's newest wielder, Midoriya Izuku. Nana chuckled and spread her arms wide in a dramatic fashion. Plenty of room in here, as you can see. So all of this isn't real. Nonsense. It's as real as you and me. We exist, that is. Unless you're having an existential identity crisis right now. That would suck. Very funny, sensei. I see you haven't lost your sense of humor. He grinned, still looking around at the impossible environments. There were snow-capped mountains in the distance, ocean waves washing against the rocks in a calm rhythm. All Might look contemplative, considering the situation. The real me is still out there teaching young Midoriya. That's good to know. But what happens to us? Do we go mad in here? Actually, it takes around an hour for the power to settle down, and then a little more for you to manifest. I've been sitting here waiting for you to show up. Midoriya's exam is about to start. And of course you're not going to go mad. I'm not mad. At least, I don't think I am. Remember those times you were in a pinch and you suddenly felt a surge of power or otherworldly knowledge come to you? That was me, or one of us helping you out subconsciously. Anyway, we're basically here to guide and help the user out whenever he or she needs it. One of us, the previous wielders of One for All, Nana answered, pointing at the colored lights circling around her head. 7 lights, for 7 wielders. All Might's eyes widened once again at the revelation. We live on in the inherited power, and never truly die. Congrats, Toshinori. You get to be an immortal. All Might stared blankly, unsure of how to react. So all this time you guys were watching me. That's creepy. What kind of reaction is that? You just got told you're an immortal. You're no fun. And to answer your question, something like that. We can only see snippets of your life, incomplete memories. Look, the woman pointed to a violet orb of light, one of the 7. This one's me. And here our strength is shared, not that I need it here anyways. Too bad we can't spar to see how far you've come. So that's going to happen to you and me? He asked, slightly nervous of the answer. Pretty much, yeah. I'll turn into a glowing light and float around your head. You'll watch over young Midoriya, just as I have watched over you. I see. It's good that I can help the boy out, even if I don't make it in the real world. Can any of the other wielders materialize like you do now? You're taking this awfully well, eh? I can only do it so easily because I'm the second latest to wield the power. If you want to summon a previous wielder for his wise sage advice, she waggled her eyebrows comically. You'll have to dismiss me temporarily. Relax, you won't go mad in here, right? So what other duties do I have in here? Well, first of all you have to. Nana suddenly stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening in alarm. She spun on the spot to face a different direction, a bewildered look on her face. That can't be right. What the hell? There was a loud whooshing as a circular oval of light manifested mere meters away from them, the intense glare almost overwhelming. Is that supposed to happen? No, I've never seen anything like that before. The light eventually subsided, and at the spot it had been stood a young girl in an oversized hoodie. Her arms were outstretched upwards and her eyes scrunched shut as she yawned, mouth open wide. Both Nana and All Might stared at the new individual in confusion. She hadn't spotted them yet, her eyes still shut as she walked groggily past them with a sleepy expression. Shoulder-length black hair bobbed from side to side as the girl stumbled over some pebbles. 𝗏𝗏 started to reach out before his old mentor's arm stopped him, her head shaking slowly. No. Her hand latched over his mouth quickly, stopping the words from coming out while she kept her eyes on the strange child. Don't move or make a sound, 𝗏𴏛 whispered in a hushed voice. 𝗏𴏏 complied, watching cautiously as the girl pulled herself up onto a nearby flat rock. Nobody else is supposed to be in here. 𝗏𴏏 looked to her, then at the girl. He raised an eyebrow and she slowly lifted her hand off his mouth, allowing him to speak again. He fully got her implication that something wasn't right, opting to keep his voice low. It's just a kid. Maybe she's a young telepath probing into his mind. No telepath could go this deep, she said softly. We're literally at the innermost parts of Midoriya's mind, his psyche. This is something else. One of the motes of light in Nana's halo suddenly started blinking rapidly, as if it was starting to panic. Toshinori. Yeah. He watched as the tiny girl shifted, apparently trying to find a good position to sleep in as she curled into a tight ball. I think I know what that is, Nana said, her voice barely audible now. One of the previous wielders is telling me she's some sort of split personality. Or worse, a tulpa. Thing is, they've never seen one so advanced. It's almost as if she's sentient. How can you tell? From the memories they're showing me, split personalities or entities usually manifest as either a rough shape or sound this deep in the psyche, never a crystal clear image like this one. So she's like an imaginary friend. Is that good or bad? Bad. Really, really bad. It means she's focused and tangible to us. If she's defensive, she'll be like a white blood cell. Worst case scenario, she'll think we're invaders and will do her best to destroy us utterly and completely. A split personality in young Midoriya's mind. That didn't sound good. She might look like a kid, but the hero knew from experience not to underestimate small, cute or vulnerable-looking opponents. 𝗏𴏏 hesitated, then looked to his old mentor. Can we take her? The light that had blinked previously started blinking even faster, Nana's eyes widening in response. Probably, since you're, well, you. But Wielder's telling me it's not a good idea to fight her. This is her domain as much as it is his mind. It'd be the same as breaking into someone's house and picking a fight with them. Totally not cool. What do we do? He whispered back. We can't just keep avoiding her forever. For now, we need to fall back and come up with a plan. She turned and began tiptoeing away. Hopefully we can reach a peaceful resolution with her. We're kind of intruding on her home here. 𝗏𴏏 nodded, then turned and began to follow the older woman. Just as he took a few steps, a sudden small tug on his pant leg stopped him in his tracks, forcing him to look back slowly. The little girl was now directly behind him, her small hand tugging at his jeans. Her other hand rubbed at her eyes sleepily, still yawning. Nana froze where she stood, an uneasy expression on her face. Oh. The girl cracked both eyes open, her large pupils gazing at 𝗏𝗏 in confusion, then at Nana. The two adults stood still as the child began to look between the two back and forth like a referee at a tennis match. Then she focused on 𝗏𝗏, her doe-like eyes locking onto his face with laser precision. The confusion started to disappear, and with it came a spark of recognition. That recognition turned into sadness without warning, moisture already starting to form at the corner of her eyes. 𝗏𝗏 stammered, resisting the urge to back away. Her lower lip began to tremble and the girl started to sniff, before finally breaking out in small, miserable sobs. Tears began to stream down her face as the small child began to cry, her soft sniffling echoing through the landscape as she collapsed to the grass on her knees. Nana jogged up beside 𝗏𝗏, a strange sense of pity overcoming the both of them as they watched the poor girl cry her eyes out. What did you do? Nana asked her student, her voice low and dangerous. She bent down and began to comfort the girl, patting her on the back gently as her crying slowly subsided to small hiccups. The array of souls on her halo was flashing rapidly like a strobe light now. She ignored their warning, taking on a motherly tone to try and placate the girl. There, it's okay. We're not trying to steal your home. Poor thing, she really is just a kid. Maybe she thinks we're here to take over Midoriya's mind. I didn't do anything. She just started crying when she saw me, 𝗏𝗏 assured, scratching his head. Probably scared her with that bony face of yours. She sighed. Do you know this kid? Never seen her before in my life. Hang on, let me see if I can get a reading off her. Nana placed her hand on the girl's forehead, which started to glow softly. She's upset that she'll no longer be needed. What is that supposed to mean? 𝗏𝗏 asked, confused. Why would she be unneeded? Something wasn't right here. No idea. Nana puzzled, trying to put the clues together. Quick, change into your muscle form. That'll help her see that we're the good guys. She'll be sure to recognize your hero form. All Might complied and changed to his hero form in an instant, complete with trademark mighty grin. Have no fear, because I am here. He completed the intro with a mighty flex pose, one that even casual fans would be sure to remember. If the girl was part of Midoriya, then she would certainly recognize this. As it turned out, the girl did recognize him and stopped sniffling, an expression of fury suddenly crossing her features. The girl stood and transformed, growing rapidly as her hair lengthened and her skin turned snow white, her pupils glowing with a soft green light. Before either of them could say anything, her fist crashed into All Might's face with a thunderous boom, sending him flying back into a rock formation which crumbled under the impact. Nana looked on, transfixed as the girl's true form was revealed. She'd seen her in All Might's memories. But how? Why was she here? Valkyrie? Ouch. All Might got up from the pile of loose rocks, now facing his new opponent. Oh, well that's unexpected, Valkyrie growled, fresh tear marks still staining her cheeks. She continued walking up to him, her stride defiant and confident. Graceful fingers curled to form solid fists. He'd never seen her this angry before. Actually, he hadn't seen her with any other expression besides her default stare. This was different, maybe because they were in a mental form now. Oh, hi, Miss Valkyrie. What a coincidence. Didn't know you lived here. Sorry for the intrusion. That explains a lot of things actually, like how nobody was ever able to track you down. You live in people's minds. The vigilante slammed her fists together, creating a small shockwave. She then began to crack her knuckles threateningly, not looking very friendly at all. Unlike the real world, here she could express her emotions freely. Instead of her usual cold expression, her face was locked into a rictus of rage, clearly upset at his presence. So you can talk after all, All Might exclaimed. Since you can speak, why don't we just settle this with words? Just calm down, there's no need for violence. All Might shifted his head just in time to avoid a powerful haymaker, followed by a high kick that scythed through the air, and inches away from his nose. He heard Nana yelling in the background, but couldn't quite hear her when he was busy dodging. He'd never seen the girl so emotional before. Why was it that she could express herself so much at here? The hero blocked an impressive overhead strike, his bones creaking from the impact. Wasn't too bad, he'd fought stronger and faster villains. He caught Valkyrie's extended arm and twisted to catch her in an armlock, pinning her down. Since he was much stronger than her, she wouldn't be able to break out of it by brute force. Sorry about this, young lady, but you need to calm down. Valkyrie responded almost instantaneously, shrinking down to her child form to slip out of the armlock. Her tiny fist rocketed into his chin as she executed a perfect uppercut. All Might was sent flying a second time, this time recovering mid-air. He angled downward, unsure if he could bring himself to attack someone that looked like an innocent kid. His opponent didn't have the same dilemma, still tiny as she leapt into the air after him. Stop. Don't fight her, Nana cried from the ground, watching as the two clashed in a thunderous impact. The pair crashed straight through a wall of stone, chunks of solid rock trailing behind them as the diminutive fighter rained down small but powerful blows on All Might's guard. They finally landed facing each other, the girl changing back into her older combat form as her feet touched the ground. I'm not trying to, she just keeps attacking. The hero blocked another combo consisting of multiple swings and kicks. Hang on, I'll end this quickly. What? Why? His fist raced towards Valkyrie, speed and power manifest, until she caught it with an open palm. Visible shockwaves exploded from the point of impact, a waft of steam sizzling from where their hands met. In all his years of heroism, he could count the number of people who had actually stopped a punch from him on one hand. The girl had a murderous expression on her face, but her eyes shone with a sorrowful desperation. Something in those eyes made the hero pause, reminding him of what Nana had said earlier. Won't let you take mine, Valkyrie whispered, glaring at her opponent. All Might's eyes widened in stunned surprise. What did she even mean by that? We're not trying to steal your home. You're misunderstanding, he tried, watching the girl grit her teeth as she began to push against his strength. To his amazement, he found himself putting more and more effort just to stop his fist from moving back. He'd seen her fight before and had never seen her this strong before. Had she been holding back in the real world, upset that she'll no longer be needed? The words echoed hauntingly. His gut feeling told him he was misunderstanding something. But what? All Might didn't get a chance to contemplate any further when she tightened her grip around his fist, dragging him close. To his shock, the girl moved forward and slammed her forehead against his face in a vicious headbutt. Whoever taught this girl how to fight must have been quite the savage. His fists flew, crashing against her body to no avail. He was fast and strong enough to dodge or block the incoming blows, but realized that he couldn't do enough damage to take her down. Just as his power here was the same as the real world, she too had her strange invulnerability. He wasn't a fool. He'd read the reports, ran the simulations regarding her. They were locked in a stalemate, with both of them unable to take the other down. Unstoppable force versus immovable object. Logic versus emotion. All Might versus Valkyrie. Stop fighting her, Toshinori. You're only making things worse, Nana shouted, powerless to stop the two juggernauts. Since she shared power with All Might, moving in to engage would effectively have his strength. There was an ear-splitting crack that echoed through the air. Trying, All Might argued, blocking another blow. She's really upset. Is it because we're taking up her living space? You don't understand, you big oaf. I've figured it out. She isn't a split personality, she's a mental projection. That's how she can be in the real world and the mindscape. The ground beneath him buckled from the impact of her kick. So she takes naps in people's heads. Think back to when Midoriya met her after the sludge attack in the tunnel. Remember her reaction. The woman yelled, her eyes tracking the two fighters as they cut a swath of carnage throughout the environment. Water and dirt exploded up in enormous volumes as Valkyrie missed her swing, her fist slamming into the riverbed where he had stood just moments before. All Might quickly thought back to when the two had met, how the vigilante had paid extra care and attention to the young boy, something she never did before for anyone. She even smiled. Young Midoriya was special to her. What does it have to do with anything? The hero narrowly dodged Valkyrie's reverse heel kick, followed by a quick swipe. He countered by ramming his fist into her face, which did absolutely nothing except make her angrier. Why do you think she cares about him, a completely ordinary boy? She's not just any mental projection. She's his mental projection. That's why she's in here. Midoriya Izuku isn't quirkless, Valkyrie is his quirk. The realization shocked All Might to the core, stunning the hero. But that meant, All Might's train of thought was derailed when Valkyrie took advantage of his temporary state of confusion, a knee catching him in the midsection, followed by a backflip to create some distance between them. Emerald light blazed from the girl's eyes and she roared with fury, her arm cocking back in a horrifyingly familiar fashion, one that he'd seen hundreds of times before. All Might's eyes widened for the umpteenth time. Impossible. She couldn't be. Detroit, Valkyrie howled, already leaping high up into the air as her fist angled downwards. She was. All Might grinned, feeling the power of One for All surging through his body. How long since he had a real challenge. This would be fun, even if it was in a mental landscape instead of the real world. A mighty arm reared back, immense raw power coursing through muscle and bone. The strength of 8 different individuals over several different generations compiled into a single punch. Texas, power against power. Hero against vigilante. The excitement he felt made him feel alive again, just like when he'd first wielded One for All. So what if he wasn't the real Toshinori? This was real enough for him. The both of them finished simultaneously, their fists crashing together with a deafening boom. A thunderclap of pure energy resonated through the air as the ground itself splintered and cracked. The resulting explosion of light, sound and pressure shattered the landscape. Chunks of rocks and trees sent flying from the shockwave alone. The earth shook, tectonic layers shattering and rupturing upward like a blooming flower. Every tree nearby was uprooted. Every faraway body of water rippled roughly. When the smoke cleared, All Might was the one left standing. Valkyrie sat on the broken ground in her child form, blinking in confusion. Nana was beside the girl, the 7 motes of light that circled her head previously now wrapped tightly around the girl's body. The vigilante struggled in vain, trying her best to get out of the binding, but to no avail. Nana sighed in relief, rubbing her temples in little circles. It was only natural that All Might would win, even if you used his own moves against him. The girl still had a lot to learn. Valkyrie may be an immovable object, but All Might was both the unstoppable force and the immovable object. Thanks to your little clash, I was able to seal her with the help of One for All. Temporarily, anyway. Now we can get her to calm down and just talk. Time out, little lady. It's not fair. Valkyrie squeaked angrily, her feet trashing around and teeth snapping at one of the lights. All Might thought she looked kind of cute when she wasn't trying to tear his head off. And now she's throwing a tantrum. Perfect. A contrast of how she's usually like in the real world. Just great. The ex-heroine groaned, waving him over. Why don't you talk to her, Toshinori? All Might knelt down, lowering himself so that he was almost eye to eye with the smaller girl. She pouted, turning away and refusing to look at him. He tried giving her another trademark smile, to which she replied with by sticking her tongue out at him. What a brat. Hello, Miss Valkyrie. Now why did you attack me? I assure you we're not trying to take over young Midoriya's mind, if that's what you're worried about. One for all doesn't work like that. Why were you so angry at us? Mine at ears. Can you repeat that? Mine. Oni-I-chan's mine. But with your power. The girl wore a crestfallen expression now, looking like she was about to cry. You'll take him away from me. Oni-I-chan won't want me anymore. You're talking about young Midoriya. Why won't he want you anymore? All Might puzzles. You're a great hero, even if your methods are a bit unorthodox. I'm sure young Midoriya is very proud of you. Oni-I-chan doesn't know about me. About us? Too dangerous. Valkyrie shook her head slowly. With your power, he'll be a hero on his own, won't need me to be a hero anymore. A loud sniffle, followed by a choking sob. Won't want me. Doesn't know about me. Won't need me to be a hero anymore. Upset that she'll no longer be needed. The decade-long mystery of Valkyrie's origin was starting to unravel now. Young Midoriya was the missing link and the cause of everything. The unaware master of the projection. Valkyrie had appeared roughly 10 years ago. All Might blanched. That would have made her an actual kid. He felt horrible now, like he had just bullied the now helpless child before him. Oni-I-chan. The tiny girl began to cry, large tears streaming down her soft cheeks once again. Nana knelt down to comfort her, patting her on the back softly. Well, that was upsetting. He never was good with crying girls, so he'd leave that part for his mentor to handle. So Midoriya really does think he's quirkless, and Valkyrie was unwilling to involve her creator in danger. Poor girl had probably been trying her best to be a hero because of him, following his ideal image of a hero ever since he inadvertently created her. That's the best or closest scenario he could come up with. But why did she keep referring to him as Oni-I-chan? Brother? Before he could confirm his theory, the sky turned blood red, alarming all three people. Nana, what's? The sky lit up like a screen, depicting a humongous green robot smack dab in the middle. All Might instantly recognized the machine as one of the zero-pointer bots that were used for the UA entrance exam. That means this was what Midoriya was seeing now. The captured girl started struggling even harder, clearly panicking and worried for Izuku's safety. No. To everyone's shock, instead of running away from the massive threat, the boy started running towards the zero-pointer, evidenced by the view closing in on the robot. Midoriya Izuku leaped high in the air, his voice echoing through the mindscape like the roar of a tornado. The lights binding Valkyrie flickered with an unearthly glow. 𝗬𝗓𝗏. The metal behemoth's face crumpled under the force of Izuku's attack, rocking back as multiple explosions bloomed across its body. He had done it. All Might felt a strange sense of pride, a grin already forming on his face. Nana chuckled, watching the scene with a nostalgic look. Valkyrie watched, transfixed and eyes wide with wonder. Then Izuku fell, the ground racing up to meet him. The sky darkened to a deeper red as his fear magnified tenfold. All of them watched in horror, helpless as the ground came closer and closer until, smack, the camera panned right all of a sudden as somebody hit Izuku right across the face. Miraculously, his momentum stalled just a few meters off the ground, floating as though in zero gravity. A girl perched on a piece of broken robot came into view, a nauseated look on her face as she shakily touched her fingertips together. Release. Both of them collapsed onto the ground gently, the girl who saved Izuku starting to throw up her breakfast from the effort of using her quirk. The camera panned straight forward, moving slowly but surely. What was Izuku was dragging himself against the ground with his remaining good arm. If I could just get 1 point. TIMESSS up. With that announcement, the screen blacked out as Izuku, blacked out. All Might sighed, relieved that the boy would be okay. He could barely even control the power, but he had potential. With some training he might be able to wield it properly in time. Valkyrie still couldn't stop squirming, her worry obviously apparent. She only calmed down a little later when she suddenly looked skyward once more, sensing something. What she'd sensed was her brother's limbs mending themselves as a healing power was applied. But the two intruders didn't need to know that. Alright, Miss Valkyrie, let's try this again from the top. All Might exhaled, satisfied that everything was calmer now. I'm All Might, as you already know, and this wonderful woman is Shimura Nana, the previous wielder of One for All. Nana waved sheepishly, whispering to All Might, you sure picked a great successor, huh? It's a 2-for-1 deal, buy one get one free. The hero ignored her teasing, opting to address the captured vigilante again. Young lady, do you know why we're here? The girl answered by blowing a raspberry at him, sticking her tongue out in defiance. Nana chuckled, a hand to her mouth as she attempted to stifle her laughter. Ask stupid questions, get stupid answers. Of course she knows why we're here, you dummy. All Might sighed, resisting the urge to facepalm. This is going to be harder than I thought.